This conference will now be recorded.
All right, guys, good evening. My name is Stephanie Taylor. I am Community Association Manager for the Country Club Championsgate. Hi, everyone. For those of you online, I don't think it's an issue, but if you've not muted yourself, please do so, because otherwise we will get feedback. But we are going to get started with this the 2023 runoff election. So as you know, the 2023 annual election did result in a tie between two of the candidates. So this is to determine who is going to hold that fifth seat on the board of directors. Meeting was called to order at 6 p.m. Proof of notice. Notice for this meeting was mailed out to all of our owners, and it was posted on the board. And I'm going to hand you over to Ashley Lufo, our attorney, to close the polls and just talk through the process this evening. Thank you.
Ashley, you want to get close to the mic as well, please?
Sure. Good evening. Has anybody not cast their ballot? Anyone? Okay, the polls are closed. Chandra, if you'll make sure that they close, no, not to accept any ballots. We're going to go to the Oak Room and we're going to start the count. I want to thank everybody that signed up electronically on behalf of the volunteers that are going to open up the envelopes, because there's about 50 more people that voted electronically and not by paper ballot, but we still have quite a few to open. Anybody's welcome to go watch the counting. We're going to have to go verify the envelopes, then we're going to have to open them in a certain order, and then we're going to count them, and I'll be back with the results as quickly as possible. Okay? All right, that's it. Thank you.
Let's go. Sorry. And just to certify the number of ballots that were cast, we had 61 ballots, paper ballots turned in, and we had 161 vote electronically. Yes.
How many people have been eligible to vote? The cumulative number of eligible voters.
937.
How many did vote paper and electronic?
222.
222 voted in total.
Which is a pretty good turnout in comparison to previous years and previous votes.
Yeah. So talk amongst yourselves.
Not ideal.
So as soon as we have the results, we will let you know. I know it is a bit warm in this room. My apologies. As you guys know, at the last board meeting, we did approve that HVAC preventative maintenance agreement. It begins tomorrow. So they'll be here tomorrow to fix everything.
You can hear me.
Okay, Max. Can we mute?
What happened? I lost one reason.
Well, then quit kicking.
Say that again?
I'm gonna say that again because online was muted. The counting has been finished. So if everybody could please take their seats and we are gonna hear the announcement of the runoff election for the fifth seat on the board.
I would like to thank our volunteers again for doing double time. Thank you. All of the records are going to be available in the management office. The winner of the runoff election is Mark Roseland. Thank you to everyone for participating. I'm going to go back with the ballots because I need to make sure they're all organized because you retain them in your records. And this wasn't an official meeting because it was just a runoff election, but I know that you have a board meeting afterwards.
We do.
Okay.
Mark, you need to come up here.
Yep, so we can invite Mark up to the table with the rest of our board members.
You got a seat for him?
You have a chair.
Oh, I thought there was another chair. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Congratulations, sir.
Honor and privilege. There you go.
Can I adjourn?
Or we don't need to.
You don't need to adjourn the election meeting. No, that's not fine. I'm gonna go with the official records and I'm just gonna give those to management and then I'm going, unless you need me, I'm gonna head out, right? Is that okay? Okay.
Get back to me on that.
Yeah, I will, absolutely. And I'm gonna check with, I texted Samir, but I was counting, so I'll make sure that.
Just send me the email,
Yeah.
and then so I can get back. It'll just be kind of weird.
Yeah, 100%. No, thank you for that. All right? Thank you.
Okay,
I
thanks,
didn't want to interrupt the board meeting.
Actually, you gotta make sure that Brittany gets the box and everything.
I will be with Brittany.
Yeah, okay.
All right, congratulations.
Okay, so, then we do have a regular board meeting. I'll get to you in a second, Karen. We do have a regular board meeting, so I will call the board meeting to order at 6:33. There is a quorum because there's 4 of us here in the room. Alan Westerman, the treasurer, sends his regrets. He's currently at the Old Opry in Nashville, enjoying his evening out with his wife. So he couldn't join us today. Proof of notice was posted on the board and has been posted out in terms of mailed out to everybody and emailed. And I'd just like to firstly take this opportunity of welcoming Mark. Congratulations, Mark, on becoming a board member for the next 2 years. You know, we've got
Mark one. Yes.
we have a lot of work ahead of us in terms of the new point of sale system that's being implemented, the construction defect attorney lawsuit that we're going to be going through over the next couple of years, along with regular day-to-day business. So, you know, a lot of work for us to be doing, and we're glad to have you on board to help out with that. I'd also like to take this opportunity of thanking Marilyn McNivitz for the work that Marilyn did over the last couple of years on the board, and prior to that on the turnover committee, and the tremendous amount of work that she did for this community. Thank you, Marilyn. And I do hope that you will continue to, you know, in some form or other, continue to support the community on one of the committees, or in some form, as I say, in some form or other, because your background and experiences will be invaluable to the community. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Okay, new business. So we have 4 agenda items for new business. First of all is the revision to the ARC standards, which were mailed out with the ballots. So you had 14 days notice to review those ARC standards, and it's now up to the board to approve those changes that were recommended by the ARC committee, which was reviewed by the legal counsel and reviewed by the board. So we just need to have, firstly, a motion to approve those amended architectural standards.
So moved.
Could I have a second?
Excuse me.
Yeah, just bear with me.
We don't want you to vote on it.
Okay,
Well,
but we have to make a motion
vote on it.
first.
Have a second. Thank you. Okay, so I will now open it up for questions. Karen, I know you and Kathy have a question with regard to the bills.
What was the vote count? How much from Mark, how much?
I don't think we do not disclose that.
I do have a question on the art, because the wording for the villa patios is not correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gary, did you want to enlighten us on that situation? Gary has put together, following Kathy, your email and also Peter's response, a memo to the board. It wasn't on the original agenda, so we can't vote on that tonight, but it's something that Gary has given us a couple of options to overcome the fact that it wasn't correctly put into the standards. Otherwise, we're going to have to send another 14-day notice out to get it approved, and that's a significant cost. So there are a couple of options for us to overcome that situation, which Gary has proposed. One of them is for the board to review the language and agree a variance to that language pending a revision to the ARC standards next year. Or the second option is that one of the villa homeowners submits a request. And the background is that the wording is unclear on whether the villa's back patios can be the width of their entire lot versus the lanai. It does say the lanai on the revised standards, but it does also go on to say, and this is where it's kind of a little confusing, it says, in the villa section of the community, back patios will be allowed to extend from the lanai wall no more than 8 feet for the interior units and 9 feet 2 inches for the end units. Back patio additions will be no wider than the lanai screen wall. Units with a shared block wall will be allowed to join their patios by filling in the spaces between the two. So that kind of suggests that if you're joined, you can actually have them for the whole width of your patio.
Well, except like in some of the units, for instance, mine, like on one side of me, if my end of the unit goes to my air conditioner, then the other person on the other side of me, their unit starts on the other side of
Right.
their air conditioner.
Yeah.
So that doesn't apply
Yeah.
on that side.
So I think what we'd like to do is to look at a variance, or we have somebody who wants to build it for the full width of their villa, apply to the ARC denies it 2 times, it comes to the board, we approve. I know it's a process.
It's a waste of time.
It might be, but we have to follow the procedures. So if the board then approves it, and then going forward, the ARC has the ability to approve them going forward based upon that approval.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, it was not put in there, it was oversight, but there is a way for us to resolve it.
happens to us all the time.
There is a way for us to resolve it, and that's what Gary has suggested, and that's what the board will take forward.
But you're saying they only have to do it once. This is only going to be.
Yeah,
Yeah, then it'll be grandfathered, and then
They
when
only have to do it once.
once the board approves that, yeah, no, but once the board approves that first appeal,
Yeah.
then our committee would have the ability to just approve them.
Why would we not just wait 14 days and cut it off quickly, so whoever doesn't have to go through the drama, to Kevin's point, to have it.
Well, the 14-day, we have to mail out to all of the residents and give them 14 days. That costs us thousands of dollars to do that every time
And
we
it's
do it.
email though. not-
No, it's not.
It
There's
has
a
to
lot,
be-
there's a huge percentage who don't have email, and we have to mail it out to
Yeah,
them.
the majority of our homeowners are not signed up for electronic notices.
So we have to mail it, which costs us thousands
Is
of
that by
dollars.
design or by default?
We don't know. You'd have to ask
It's by
each
choice, it's by
individual
choice, yeah.
homeowner. So that's the resolution we're looking at, Kathy.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
So is that correct, Gary?
Very close.
Okay, thank you. So, any other questions on the ARC standards? Otherwise, one at the back?
I have a question. Why do we need to get permission from ARC to replace a dead plant with the same type of plant? To me, that's just a waste of time. I have a plant that died. I want to replace it with the same plant. Why do I need to go online, type in and ask ARC and get permission from ARC to go to Lowe's, get the exact same plant and put it in my yard?
So
In the
that's-
exact same spot.
So if you can't hear online, the question is, why does a homeowner have to go for ARC approval to replace plants with the same plants that they have already, which have died off. That's the standards. That's what we've all signed up for.
That makes no sense to me.
I-
I love standards, I love rules, I love procedures, but I love rules and procedures that make sense, that are logical.
I think it's to ensure that we don't have homeowners deciding to replace plants with different plants which are not permitted. So in order for us to ensure that we have the right plants, such as things like fruit bearing, we can't have those. So to ensure that that doesn't occur, it is a process, as I say, to make sure that everybody has a consistent approach in the community.
So after I plant that plant, is our committee gonna come by, my resident, and take a look and say, okay, he said she was gonna put whatever type of plant there.
Yes, we do that.
She actually.
We do that, yes.
The HOA do that for us. And if it's incorrect, then it's a violation. And then after 3 violations, it goes to the covenants committee for fining.
Yeah, we do follow up though.
So if there's no other questions, any questions online? Can we have a vote on that? All those in favour? Aye. So Alan's absent, so that's passed. Okay, nursery green proposal. Who is going to talk about the nursery green proposal? So the nursery green proposal, I'll talk about it. So the proposal is to construct a nursery green behind the area on the 17th hole tee boxes. The cost of this is $17,500. It'll be constructed by Sadler's Site Work as per their invoice, which they have provided. They're currently contracted to replace the 7 tee box, which was removed by Lennar, who is paying for Lennar is paying for the replacement of that tee box. And on that, we have just received yesterday the plans from the CDD in terms of carving out that particular section to be deeded to the country club. So we will own that new tee box when it's constructed. That's just been approved. The CDD is approving that, so we can go ahead and get that done at the same time, which benefits this particular proposal, because if Sadlers do the same work, or at the same time construct the nursery green as well as the reconstruction of the 7 tee box, we get some discounted fees for that. So the recommendation is to use capital improvement account for the cost of this. So on the capital improvement account to cover the cost of this practice green. So that's the recommendation. Do I have a motion to approve that recommendation?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, do we have any questions on it? Peter?
Do we know exactly where it's going to be? I've got 2 questions. Do we know exactly where it's going to be, and do we know what the maintenance schedule for it is going to be? I think it's going to be behind Mrs. Eddie's house, which is next to mine.
Right.
And obviously the concern is that you're going to have maintenance early in the morning, which we won't want. And also, is it going to create a different view of the golf course for us? And I'm not going to say I'm in favour of it. I just want to make sure that,
Mark,
price
is it something that you have some background on?
Actually, yeah, we put this together last year. Once the only major work that's going to be done is when they do their grading and stuff to put it in. Rest of the time, it's going to be no different than a green. I mean, it'll take a while for it to green, to grow in, and then they'll top dress it. They'll do the same thing they do the other greens. So I would imagine, and I haven't talked to Ethan about that, but I would imagine that when they're mowing greens on the back, they'll probably mow that at the same time.
So that could be 7 in the morning.
It could be, but we could. I mean, that's something we can work with Ethan.
I mean, there's probably about 4 houses
The area's kind of
Even
slopey
yours
too.
as
That
well.
area slopes a lot right
I
there.
just think we need to make sure that we don't have any noise issues.
So can we amend the motion to be as having Ethan provide details of exactly where it's going to be located?
Yeah.
And the schedule around maintenance of that, so as not to disturb homeowners who are backing onto it.
So approve contingent on Ethan's details on location
I
and.
mean, at 9 o'clock is good with your.
Yeah, I mean, 8 o'clock's good, as long as it's not
Yeah,
7 o'clock.
nothing before,
Or in the summer months,
9
even earlier potentially.
Just say 9 o'clock, Stephanie, that way there's not.
Okay.
And any other questions on that?
Darren, do you have a question?
No.
No?
It's fine.
Okay.
All I was gonna say was we've asked Ethan for the same things as to a landscape rendition of exactly where it's gonna be located. We haven't got it to us yet, but
Okay.
we've asked him for it to go off.
Okay.
So the motion is contingent upon Ethan providing that?
Yep.
And that the servicing of that area will not begin before 9 AM in the morning?
Yep.
I can just amend I can just amend my motion.
Yep.
That no mowing of the nursery will be before 9 o'clock in the morning.
Okay.
And then that way, that's part of the motion and that takes care of it.
Sounds good.
Got it.
Do we have
And
a
I'll
second?
amend it, and I'll amend that.
Okay. Any other questions before we vote on that? Nothing online?
No.
No? Okay, thank you. All those in favour? Aye. So approved. Okay, volunteer waiver for residents. I was asked to talk to the attorney about seeing if it was possible to have residents do work in the community. Historically, we've been reluctant to have that because of liability, insurance risks, etc. The attorney.
Paid or volunteer?
I'm sorry?
Paid or volunteer?
Volunteer.
Thank you.
Sorry, volunteer only, not paid. We had the attorney draft up a waiver. So if we had volunteers who wanted to do work in the community, we would have them sign a waiver which would release the association from any liability that may occur. The only downside is that if we have, and the insurance broker as well as the attorney highlighted this, if you have a resident who does, say, electrical work, and there's a problem with that, and the house burns down, you've got no recourse. So they recommended if you are going to have residents sign the waiver and do work in the community, it should be something that's not going to put our property at risk. So general landscaping, clearing up, things like that, but not major electrical work, plumbing work, that kind of thing. Otherwise, that is going to be an issue for us.
Putting purse hooks.
I'm sorry?
Putting up purse hooks, for example, under the bar.
Yeah, that should be, I mean, that should be okay, that sort of thing. But
They
fixing,
arrived
but
today.
somebody fixing the fans or putting fans up out there, who is, who is a resident, they may be qualified electrician, but if something goes wrong and it's not wired properly and it burns the plaza down, then we've got a problem.
I think that, I mean, the state of Florida, I don't believe that, I mean, you can do your own work within your own house, but it would be against the law for somebody to come in here, even as a volunteer, to do electrical work, because that's a permittable thing. I mean,
Yeah,
you can only do it on your own house.
right,
You can't really do it I can't do it for your house.
okay. So I guess it allows us,
So do you think that we should
to be,
come to, like, make terms like these are the types of projects
yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
before it's approved?
Or how about the ones that require licenses, like HVAC, plumbing, electrical?
Right, nothing like that.
The problem is that if we say Elaine can come put the fans up, I'm not picking on you. If the plaza burns down, the insurance company's gonna come back and say, was there anything done recently? And you're gonna have to say yes, she's gonna have to show her license and that she's insured, and then we're gonna be in a big mess. It's gonna be a
Oh, exactly.
big spider web of liability. The insurance is gonna not wanna cover the plaza.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
But but to his point, if it's something like hanging up the coat hooks when it was purchased, I think we need to come up with a list of what are the acceptable jobs for a volunteer, or what are the jobs that are off limits?
Yeah.
I think Terry's got it right. Electrical, plumbing, anything that's gonna cause $100,000
What if those
mess.
volunteers are licensed?
Well, then they're gonna have to sign off.
I would still say no.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, Matt, is it's gonna come back to us as the HOA when the insurance company that we already pay $300,000 a year to, or almost, is gonna say, we're not covering this because Matt you didn't pay for this. And then what's gonna happen is there's gonna be a big lawsuit litigation web that we're all gonna have to deal with, including you, if you're the HVAC guy and
That's the roofer. That's
whatever.
I think for those jobs which require a qualified technician, we should have external people doing.
Just for the insurance, because, I mean, they would go back, and Matt would have to give a certificate of insurance, and his insurance would cover it. And you've got to do that on any commercial property.
And then we'd have to make sure that he continues with that insurance, because if something goes wrong with it in 12 months' time, does it renew the insurance?
You can't put that on somebody.
No,
There's no way. Because if they move to North Carolina in 3 weeks for a job transfer. We just don't know.
Yes, Derek.
Well, can we ask the insurance company if the insurance contract is nullified, if a licensed provider does the work for free as opposed to being paid, if that makes a difference?
Certainly ask. It's not.
I would think we want to ask.
The only problem is, Darren, with that, the insurance companies tell you this, and then when something happens, it's a different story. We all know that. I'm not saying we won't ask.
I'm just saying
I did qualify, sorry, Darren, to that point, I did qualify my question to the broker and to the attorney that these services are being provided free of charge, and they still said, don't use them.
Okay.
They still said, if it's general maintenance, fine, but if it is anything electrical, technical, somebody needs to be qualified for, do not.
But if they need to be qualified for it, if they are qualified.
But even then, they said no, not because of the risks.
They're just saying, don't have any residents volunteer for any job that requires a qualification.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
period.
sorry.
So, but if we so desire, could we contract with that person like we would anybody else? Could the association
For a
contract with
dollar,
them?
like for a dollar.
Right,
Well,
we
for a
just pay
dollar.
somebody.
No, I'm not even saying that.
No, Darren,
We can
meaning
hire
that there's a
them.
monetary exchange.
Well, you could do that, but I'm saying, no, you give them fair market value for their services. So, I mean, we could hire somebody to do electrical work under their company. I'm just saying.
That's not volunteer though, Darren. That's
No,
what I'm
it's
saying.
not
That's volunteer.
I think the challenge you have there, Darren, is then if something goes wrong, you've got an association that's disgruntled with a resident, and we don't want to get into that.
Okay.
I think that could cause
That I can
problems.
understand. Okay, all right.
Yes. Okay, so do we want to approve this for general maintenance or subject to having a list of tasks, or do we just not want to go there?
Hey Neil, can I ask a question?
Of course.
We do have that right now, right? Just a question. I see the guys in the golf carts, like.
We have the maintenance fee, yes.
So what are, just a question, because I don't know the answer. I know they have clipboard or whatever responsibilities. So what are their responsibilities compared to what we're talking about here? And the reason why I'm asking that is because the master is looking at the same thing. And
Right.
for people that are in the room, I'm on the master board. So we're looking at the same thing, which is when do you need to engage a trade person you know, and again, so that you can represent that it's independent of the community and that you're providing service for the
That's
community.
it's a good question.
I think it's a-
So, I
Skill
just,
trades.
Yeah.
If it's
no, but
only skilled
I'm
trades.
just bringing it up because it is a slippery slope for all of us, right? And I agree with what your point is here, which is, I think there's, and I don't know how you qualify every single task, because that's almost impossible, but we've got to figure out, I agree with you, the balance between when you need a skilled tradesman to protect against liability versus, you know, somebody who can do general maintenance like painting or repairing something at the gatehouse, which is what we're faced with, where if you know, look at the service that we're providing, you know, or engaging could be, you know, really more expensive than if we had our own in-house maintenance staff, third party. And again, then how do you delineate, you know, the work orders of what gets turned in? So just throwing that out there to think about this.
I think one easy way is if it takes a permit.
Agreed.
If it takes a permit, it's a hired contractor.
That's true.
You know, who has insurance and a license to do
That's
that.
true. Very true.
But I guess to Erin's point is, we've got a maintenance team. Do we not have enough maintenance people if there are jobs that we're having to say the residents have to step up and do?
But that's it. I don't think we have jobs that we need residents to step up and do.
Okay.
I don't.
Yeah, I mean, hanging a purse hook, I mean, I'm the least maintenance person in the world.
Right.
That's my wife, she'll tell you, I can do that.
All right.
Take the piece
I mean,
off, put the piece of paper off and
I don't
stick it
think we
on.
have enough jobs that require help from residents to do these things. I think
Okay.
we have enough staff. I think we are able to manage
I think
it.
part of that, what we talked about on the master is, you know, literally, and I hate to say this, sometimes it's a painful task, but putting together job descriptions that literally are very precise in relation to what their roles are.
Right.
And then anything outside of that scope then gets outsourced to a third party because it's very clear as to what the capabilities of the person is that we engage to do that service. And then everything beyond that task has to be outsourced. And it really is kind of a bright line for our attorneys and our insurance company.
Right, right.
I know that we have people that can do certain jobs, but again, sometimes we don't. I mean, let's look at the bricklayers, you know, the pavers. I'm sure we have somebody in the community that knows how to lay pavers. I mean, we'd like to say FSR does it, and you know, they do a good job sometimes, but sometimes they don't. And I think this is a good thing. I think this is something that we need, hence not with the trades.
Right. I mean, you have to think about it this way. And I'm not saying that this would be like a job, but like, for example, pressure washing. I know that that's like a hot topic right now. Our maintenance guys are absolutely capable of going out there and pressure washing. However, that's going to take them all day or multiple days, and it's going to take them away from the daily responsibilities that they have. So that's when we have to outsource it. And I'm not saying that pressure washing should be a resident volunteer job.
You just have to quantify it, what is it gonna cost to bring a company,
Right.
10 grand to pressure washer, send them out for a week to do it, that's.
Right, or like if we tasked our maintenance guys with painting the inside of the clubhouse, more than capable of doing it, but it's gonna take them multiple days, and then who's gonna do the daily, everyday things that need to be done?
So maybe we agree on this, or we vote on this, and we have a look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
First Services brings something to us, or a resident says, you know, I want to do that, we'll look at it and say, okay, is that good or not? Rather than, you know, sort of say yes or no.
Well, I think we've kind of been doing it already. I mean, I remember when the golf carts came. I mean, we used all volunteer help to assemble the golf carts when they were shipped here.
Yeah.
And I think those are some of the things that we're looking at, you know, whether it be weeding a garden or going out and pulling weeds or planting flowers or whatever. If there's a dozen volunteers that want to go out and do something, we should allow that type of thing.
And then we get them to sign off
A release.
on this,
That's
a
exactly
release.
right, a release.
A release, so if they do injure their back by pulling the weeds,
No,
they're
but
not
it's
going
the
to come
same.
back and sue us.
To Neil's point, it's a release.
Yeah.
Right.
And allow them to do what they want to do. They release the association from any legal liability, but they're not performing trade tasks, which
Yeah.
Pat just talked about, and you talked about. If there's a license that is required, I think that's, you reach a whole other level of, of literally diligence that's required in relation to
Right.
hiring, engaging, so that if there is some unfortunate incident, God forbid, that the association's covered, because nobody wants to come out of pocket to, because somebody was trying to do the right thing and unfortunately it resulted in a bad accident.
Well,
So any other questions? Otherwise we can vote on it.
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way. If it costs $3,000 to have something done around here, that's $3 per home.
Yeah.
So you want to put your $700,000
We know.
asset up for $3?
Agreed.
So that's the thing we have to look at. Unfortunately, sometimes it costs money to get things done.
But right now, we're just approving the waiver.
We're approving the waiver, that's all we're approving, and then we can look at it on a case-by-case basis as they come up. Yeah. All those, did we have a motion for it?
No, I need a motion.
Can we have a motion?
I'll make them.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favour? Okay, that's passed. Okay, and then the last thing on the agenda, yes,
Oh, so sorry.
I'm sorry.
It says your maintenance people don't have any tools to do maintenance.
Okay, that's not true.
Okay.
No, I already raised that with Stephanie. The maintenance people may not have asked
Yeah.
Stephanie for the tools. They absolutely will have the tools if they.
I would like to say anything that our maintenance guys have ever asked within reasonable, they've been provided.
Yeah.
So if they don't have it, it's because they've not asked me for it.
Thank you.
But I've never denied our maintenance team of anything that they really need.
Okay, and then the last item is the proposal to move the capital contribution funds into the operating account. So the capital contribution is when there is a resale on a home, there is a capital payment by the buyer to buy into the community of $2,000. Historically, well, since January 1, we've been putting that money into the reserve fund because we started January 1 with 0 reserves. We've now built up those reserves over the last 9 months, so we've got a nice healthy reserve fund, which continues to build because we're not having to spend any of it. And the anticipation is we won't have any serious spending for that for another 3 or 4 years. So that fund will be quite significant by the time we get to that, unless there's one of the walls on the 18th green suddenly collapses and that, we need to deal with that. But, failing that, we will be able to build up a nice reserve to be able to fund any future improvements that we need to make in the community as per the engineering study. So what the recommendation or the proposal here is to move that capital contribution of $2,000 for every home back into the operating to help with cash flow, which is what it has been prior to January 1. It's always been part of the cash flow. So that's the proposal that's being made tonight. So first of all, can I have a motion for that proposal?
So moved.
Okay, could I have a second?
Second, I'll second.
Thank you, Pat.
How many, question, how many do we have to date that are sold and closed?
What's the average cost?
Roughly.
About how much, yeah.
I think we're running at about 5 a month, I think, at the moment.
So about $2,000.
Average.
Yeah.
More than 5. More than 5.
We did.
Yeah, Terry, tell us.
Terry got
To be sold.
about, Matt and Terry got about 5. It's probably about 8 a month on average. On average, we sell right around 100 homes a year.
Yeah.
So
I think we budgeted for 195,000 in 2023, and that's what we're looking at for 2024 to help cash flow.
And did we come up with a number or what we're comfortable with to have in reserve funds?
Well, the reserve fund is being funded at the levels which the engineering study, and I'm talking about the general reserve fund, not the villa reserve fund, just the general reserve fund, that is being funded at the levels that the engineering study recommended.
Is this study, is this engineering study on?
I'm sorry, Pat?
Is it engineering study on Connect? Or at least
The
schedule?
engineering study? Yes, I think it is.
There's never,
So it is,
schedule.
it's available.
It really doesn't hit anything significant until 2030.
Where?
And even at that point, we'll have plenty.
Yeah. Barring any unforeseen events,
As long as I don't wire the fans.
Teresa.
So if we do this is going to help with the cash flow. This is going to help with the golf committee trying to come up with all the extra money that we need. I'm just throwing it out there.
No. It's not, no, because it's not new money. This is existing money. All we're doing is redirecting it from a reserve into cash flow. The budget remains the budget, so the golf still needs to make the number that they have agreed to make. Peter?
So it's already been taken as income in the operating account?
Yes.
But it's the cash that's the...
Correct.
It's just being allocated to where it's needed most at this point.
Yeah.
If this gets approved.
So Neil, are you talking about taking the money from January through September and moving it all that money, or are you from this date forward?
I believe Alan, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, was suggesting from beginning of October going forward, wasn't he?
Yeah, we're talking more for the budget year 2024, but we could do it now because this is, I'm not the treasurer, but Alan's not here, so it's a tricky thing. So if we have a negative or a plus, then we have to figure out how to get close to zero being a nonprofit. We don't have any worries about that right now, but we need the cash flow more than we need the reserves right now, is I guess how I would explain it.
Yeah, but you're just moving, and I will support Alan in this commentary, that the money, when it comes in, it's already recorded, whether it's revenue or not.
Yes.
Right.
So it's really just moving cash balances from one account to another and being able to support the activity of whatever the expenditure is, because all of that's already been accounted for. So I'm just saying, like, it's not new revenue. It's just timing. It's just timing is all that it is.
It's being able to use it as part of our cash flow as opposed to a reserve.
It's moving it, that's exactly, it's just cash moving from a reserve account to an operating account, and then being able to use it towards the expenditures for the budget that you guys have already identified and approved.
Correct.
So the question, just for the other average homeowner is, so we're saying we have this reserve, right? Are we saying that we're, right now, the way we're looking in 2024, we're not gonna have an increase in the HOA because we have this extra money?
No.
Okay.
Let me explain that. Let me explain that. Yeah, let me explain.
Because that puts everybody fine, right? We have this extra money to move it here, we have extra cash, we need the cash flow. But from the average person on the phone, they're probably saying, okay, how does that help me?
Yeah.
Are we gonna see another increase next year, and I'm gonna have a heart attack?
It's a great question. The reserve funds are put into a reserve account and we collect that on a monthly basis. That will continue. It's likely that will continue at the same level as it was this year and next year. That's purely the reserves, with the exception of the villas. So the villas is a completely different calculation. And that will continue because that is what the engineering study told us we need to start to save for future expenditure in the community. The rest of your HOA dues, obviously they are impacted by inflation, by salaries, by all of the things that we have on our wish list that we want to do in 2024 that we've not been able to do in 2023. And so that will come out with a number. We will have a budget town hall, which is scheduled for...
I'm so sorry, the budget town hall, October 9th. It's October 9th.
October 9th, when we'll go through that level of detail. HOAs will go up. They are going to go up. Once we've got to the town hall, we'll have a figure that will be able to tell you how much they are proposed to go up, and then they have to be approved by the board at the next board meeting after that. Yes?
So what you're saying is you made up the deficit for the whole time Lennar was not funding the reserve fund?
No, we have not. No, if we did that, that reserve would be significantly higher than that because Lennar has not been funding any reserves for us. So what we've done is we got an engineering study which said, your assets have a lifespan of X number of years. This is how much each home needs to be putting in. And it's inflation linked, so it's all calculated on that. It will go up in time, but for next year, we don't think it's going to need to go up for the 937 homes for general reserves.
Stop funding the reserves by the home sales to put that in the cash flow, but then there's a deficit in the reserve fund.
I mean, you're not allowed to, the reserve funds have to be used for specific purposes.
Right, I'm well aware.
It can't be used for general operating.
Right.
This capital contribution was something separate. That's, for selling homes. It's not the reserve fund. We just put it in there because we wanted to build that. But so we can't just bring that reserve fund back in. I mean, we could say, let's not put any reserves out there at all. And then when something goes wrong, the homeowners at that time would have a special assessment, which could be thousands of dollars as a one.
And that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we're going to stop putting into that deficit to fill that deficit that Lennar created.
Well, Lennar didn't create a deficit. They just didn't give us anything.
They didn't give us anything.
Well, they didn't give us anything. Well,
Right.
we're going to be taking legal action against them, as you know, to see what. Well, they actually did give us something. They gave us a starting capital of $400,000 when they turned over. They gave us a $400,000 payment for what they felt was due to us. We feel that there's significantly more than that due on the financial side, and then you've got the whole construction issues that we're going to be suing them for additional money as well.
The schedule that was brought out with the engineering study included, the $40-some we pay a month each right now. That was the capital contribution was never included in that schedule that we put together last year at this time.
But I hear what you're saying. Did they fund anything for, the fact that the plaza opened, 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and we've only been putting a reserve fund in for a year?
That's what I'm saying.
No, they didn't.
And because all this infrastructure is already aged,
Yeah.
the roads,
Yeah.
the sidewalks, the lampposts if we own them or if we rent them, whatever, that is all owned by us.
So the engineering study took that into consideration. So I see where you're going.
But did they start the day of the engineering study and say going forward?
No, they gave us a life on all the assets, and then if we would have started this back in 2014 or 13, whenever they started this community, we could have started at everybody has a $7 a month reserve, and that would have built up. We picked up at the 10-year mark, whatever it was last year, the beginning of this year, so that's why I had to start at $47.
That was my.
So we're making up the difference.
I mean, Peter knows, he did a lot of the engineering study, so I don't know if you have any comments, Peter.
Just that under Florida law, the developer doesn't have to put in any capital funding, any reserve funding.
For single family homes.
For single family homes, yes. For condos.
Condos they do.
For 720 they don't.
Yeah.
However, if they do put a little bit in, then you can then sue them for the rest of the time.
They never put anything in.
You put anything in.
Right, but what my point was trying to make was if we're gonna stop putting that 2,000 to, I feel like we're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
It's not stopping though, it's not stopping, it's just getting reallocated.
It was, the 2,000 was never supposed to go towards reserves.
No.
The $2,000 was always used on the operating side, but since they've been collecting it, they've just been parking the money in the reserve account instead of the general account. And all they're doing is making it right to where that resale amount goes into the operating account. That's the only thing it's doing. It's not affecting the reserve account at all.
It's not stopping, it's just reallocating.
But you're not, that's.
No, but it is the same for the other associations, and then it's the associations across the board. That there is an amount that comes with the resale. Yeah, we all do, we all do, yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
We all do, and the use of what I think I understand is being asked for is that right now, whatever if it's backward looking or going forward, then it gets reallocated reallocated for something else that has happened, but the reserve itself would still continue, but not to incessantly fund a shortfall on the operating side, like that has to be taken care of in the next budget cycle.
Yeah.
So we now are going through 2024 budgets, so we have better information. So what I think is being asked, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that money is getting released, at least for right now, which started this past year, but that reserve would continue as a normal reserve, but for now would be released to fund something else.
Yeah, right. Okay, any other questions on that?
So you're reallocating money that was previously not designated for what you're reallocating it to.
So it was previously, if you go back to 2022 and the way Lennar managed it back in 2021 prior to that as well, they just used it as operating cash. So it just went into operating cash. We last year, when we were doing the budget, we felt, we were a little nervous that there wasn't any reserve fund. So we said, okay, why don't we use that capital contribution to kickstart the reserve fund, as well as have a reserve amount payable in your HOA assessment, so that we didn't start off, with a zero balance, which is what we did from January 1.
So
We're now looking at it and we feel that the reserve that you're paying into the reserve fund is more than adequate to cover future expenses as we go along. Therefore, there is not the need to have that 2,000 going in there as well, so we can bring that back into operating to help with our cash flow.
Bottom line is it costs more.
This money is now fungible.
Wanted to make sure that.
I'm not sure that's.
The bottom line is it costs more to borrow money than to use money that's realistically ours anyway.
No, I think what he's saying, which he's right, is we're doing the reallocation, but now instead of putting it in a reserve, which is what you're saying, it's actually going towards operating expenses. And the term reserve really doesn't apply anymore because, and master works the same way. I will say the master works the same way, which is the resale is not part of the budget. It really is kind of fungible. It's extra money that gets taken in that would subsidize any activity that would happen because it's really not part of the budget because it doesn't get charged back to the actual, neighborhood associations or the owners of the property.
My point too was, we're not gonna buy flowers to put in a.
Understood.
If we're gonna use that money, it's to fix broken stuff.
Yeah.
Understood.
Replace the air conditioner in this room or whatever,
And the thought from the treasurer, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but the thought from the treasurer is to push that into a separate account, not to mix it in with general operating and lose it, and then use it for specific.
Or
wish
at
list
the end of the
items.
year, we got a surplus, it goes into the reserve fund.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
perfectly legitimate. Yeah, that's what my question was. Thanks.
So hopefully all of this money will have a path that you can follow from A to B and where it's been expended.
It does. We have the
Always does.
full accounts.
Oh, yeah.
It always does.
We have the full accounts,
And we'll audit every year.
and they're audited every year.
That is correct, and the turnover audit happens, so at least the changeover, you have turnover audit, independent audit, and then to your point, Pat, the annual audit that happens, which really is kind of the backstop to the questions that you guys are asking.
Yep.
And the attorneys and the auditors, which are CPAs and engaged third party, can they stand by? They would never issue an opinion unless they could stand by it and it wasn't defensible.
Correct.
You have a
Can we, what's the question,
How
Teresa?
can you develop a 2024 budget without 2022 audited financial statements?
We have 2022, we just signed off on the audited financial statements for
So
2022.
They just signed off on it.
Yeah, we just signed off on it. It was complicated by the fact that we turned over to a different management company mid-year, and the prior management company, let's say, they perhaps didn't provide us with very detailed accounts, which caused a lot of investigations on behalf of the controller of First Services, and Alan did a huge amount of work on making sure that when the 2022 audited accounts were finalized, they were accurate. So that Alan and I signed off on the letter last week, so those should be published very soon. Okay, then I think we need to vote on this. So All those in favour? Aye? Okay, unanimous. So it just leaves to open it up to the forum for any non-agenda items that anybody may have a question on.
Through the grapevine, without pinpointing the source, we've been outed by Spectrum during their contentious fight with Disney. So we lost a lot of channels during that period.
Yep.
Are we being recompensed with that?
Stephanie?
Yes, we received communication from Spectrum that during that short time where those channels were not available, we are receiving a credit for our next billing statement.
Where does the credit go?
To the association because it affected the bulk Spectrum account.
Will we know the amount?
Yeah, I can look at the next billing statement and see how much it was.
Yeah, I think that would be useful to know the amount, for us to all know the amount.
Considering the number of homes that were affected.
Well, yeah, all 937, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a quick question. I know about a month or so ago, there was approval on the cleaning of the ponds, retention ponds, and there was an open item on what retention ponds are covered. The one behind Black Wolf Run, that thing is filthy, dirty, it hasn't been cleaned since who knows how long.
Stephanie?
I'll have to look and see because that was with Ethan. But I'll double check to see if that's one of the ponds.
Can you make it? Yeah. Thank you.
One of those sites.
Behind Black Wolf, you said?
Yeah, it's literally behind our house, which is 1083.
Yeah,
Okay.
I know we've had a lot of questions as well about the fountains that are not working. So that is,
I wish we had found that.
oh, okay. We do have other ponds where the fountains are not working, but those are CDD responsibility. Unfortunately, the response I got from them, I said, do you have an ETA on when these fountains will be repaired? And the response was no.
So there are two ponds in the community which still do not have fountains. One behind your house, one behind my house. I mean, and I am lobbying the CDD. They say they should be put in next year. They said they're going to put them into the 2024 budget. But I'll believe it when I see it. I've been asking it for them for like 2 or 3 years now.
So the CBD budget runs from the 1st of August, it's not like ours.
Right.
It's fiscal.
It's 1st of August, the CBD budget.
No, fiscal though, it's not calendar.
Oh, sorry, it's approved in 1st of
Yeah.
August, sorry. And he assured me that it's been approved in the budget for next year.
I know, well, it was approved in the budget for this year, they told me, and they never put them in. But yeah, we keep lobbying them because I think those are the only two, behind your house and behind my house.
But the residents can take pressure on CDD too. Everybody has the right to call in
Yeah.
to CDD if they have an issue with their fountains. And I encourage everyone to do that.
Lady at the back.
Okay.
Just ask Nancy Hughes will tell you how to reach the CDD because she's a fountain and she wants that thing to work all the time.
Sorry, we have a question at the back.
I can tell you that the CDD rate is going to remain the same for next year. But anyway, I have a golf course question. Who hires the staff for the golf course?
Who hires the staff for the golf course? That is First Services. They are First Services employees.
Question number 2. Will we remain a private golf course or semi-private? And question number 3, do they take in enough funds at the golf course to be self-sustaining?
Okay, so in answer to your last question, no. The budget, you'll see that there is a requirement for the golf to generate outside income, outside revenue in order to support the community and support the golf. Your second question, which was, is there a plan to take the golf course private? Fully private, that's with the golf committee to come up with a 3 to 5 year strategy in terms of how, what they want to do with the golf. So that's for them to come up with a strategy to decide, to present to the board.
Oh, thank you.
They will not decide. None of the committees have the ability to make any decisions. Only the board has the ability to decide things. So the committee will review it. They are working on a 3 to 5 year strategy. They'll present it to the board and the board will look at it. But something as important as that, I think the board would probably agree would need to go out to the community. Another question there. Sorry, Gary. Lisa had a question, her hand up just before you.
Yeah, sorry, very simple. Is there anywhere that we can get an organisational chart for FSR for the community with all the employees and where they are and what they do? Is that available?
Okay.
And if not, can we get one, please?
For what reason?
Well, I called in the ballot the other day and there was 3 people in the office, and I'm just wondering what the 3 people do when we're paying $12 a door anyway. And then I'm just looking at the staff in the golf course. There always seems to be a lot of morning there's rangers out and then there's no rangers in the afternoon. So I would like, as a homeowner, because FSO basically work for the homeowners,
Yes.
just to see an organisational chart. Nothing else, that's the only reason.
Okay. I mean, we did have one when we first went through the onboarding of First Services in terms of, the various disciplines and the employees they have. But that probably needs updating. So that's a good question.
Yeah, it will be interesting.
Yep. Okay. And Gary?
Could I suggest that you just put it as a slide on the budget?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then,
Yeah, the roles, the actual just roles. I don't know if that names are necessary.
No, I don't need names.
No, I'm
If there's
sorry.
3 people in the office, in such a
Understood.
small office,
Understood.
paying $12 a door to,
You have the right question. The one thing that I know
Front
that
desk
we look at
associate,
and look
admin,
at
and
from the
manager.
association is when we contract for the outside services, we look at roles and responsibilities because we don't want to tell, the people that we're engaging how to run their business, but we do work with them on, Neil, and I know I worked with you on this, the actual roles themselves, not necessarily names, but the roles that fulfill the services.
it's just, we're running in cash flow difficulties.
Understood, I
And
get
we
you.
need to make sure that
I'm
everybody
with
that's
you.
doing the job is doing the job
I
to
got
the
you.
fullest extent.
I got
It
you.
turns out everybody's talking about the fact that we're losing money on the golf course. And the last meeting, it turns out that 2 of the freest sources of advertising which anybody has, which is Facebook and Instagram, we can't use it because it's filled with TJ. The logins. So TJ left last year. So for the last year, everyone's talking about, well, we're not making enough money, we need it outside green fees, yet I don't see FSR sort of, nobody picked up the phone, 3 girls sitting in the office saying, I look after social media. It's free.
So we already sorted out the social media issue. I'm working on that with the communications committee. But nobody needs to be updated yet because nothing's happened. We literally worked this out like 2 days ago with Terry. I'm working on it with the communications committee.
Okay.
Okay? As for the 3 people in the office, it's the front desk associate, the administrative assistant, and the community manager.
That's fine.
That's it. But yes, we can provide.
I just wonder, if we're running into cash flow difficulties, do we need a front desk person, an administrative officer, as well as a CAM? So that's all, but once we get it in the budget, that'll be perfect.
Okay.
I mean, a year ago, I would like to say, a year ago, there were certain individuals on the board who did not want social media pages. So I just want to, they are coming back. They're going to be here.
Sorry, say
There's
that.
going to be a social media page for the golf course.
Yeah.
That one's going to be public, and there's going to be a private one, which is going to be the community residents.
It's no brainer.
I'm with you. I
And
agree
the
with you.
fact that it's been sitting dormant for over a year,
I get it.
somebody should be really in trouble.
I get it.
Gary, you had a question.
So at the last board meeting, we were informed that there was a significant revenue shortfall. How come in the community newsletter, because there's a lot of people that do not make the board meeting, do not get that communication, how come we didn't communicate that we have a significant cash flow problem?
Fair question. I would defer to the treasurer, who's not here to answer that question at the moment.
I think it's a Stephanie question because Stephanie's the one that puts out the
No,
Stephanie.
I'm not the person who puts out the newsletter.
Nicole puts out the
It's our
newsletter.
lifestyle director.
Okay.
And the content of the newsletter, it has to be approved by the board if it's something to that nature.
I just think that's the challenge that we have as owners is communication. Shortfall is something that's significant, especially as we head into the budget, why that kind of thing isn't being communicated to people that didn't happen to attend the meeting.
So that's why we record our board meetings when we post them on the YouTube channel. And actually, this past Friday, I sent an e-blast out to the entire community, letting them know that we recreated and updated a brand new YouTube channel with every board meeting available on it. So you can go back, any resident can look back at any board meeting that has been recorded, which is all of them.
I would also add to that the town hall.
Yep.
So just to add to your point, I think that where you can actually vocalize any concerns and questions would be the town hall for the budget meeting next year. It's going to be an opportunity because there's got to be notice that's given and everyone's going to be given the detail. I would encourage, just again, because I'm the treasurer on the master side, so that's the reason why I'm waiting here. I would encourage anyone to participate in those town halls, because that's where you'll get a majority of the detail. Like these board meetings, generally speaking, are to raise concerns and board issues or whatever. When you want to dig in, these town halls that Stephanie's, organizing, or any of the other associations, the town halls are really where you dig into the detail and where I think you have a very valuable exchange of communication and information of, homeowners, and the board, and really all parties involved. And the last thing I would say is get involved. And I mean that not just in one board meeting, 2 board meetings. I would say anybody who has capacity to even give an ounce of their time, generally speaking, and you have an expertise in a certain field, please lend that to whatever neighborhood association, because there's such a huge need in this community. And I think we are all well-intended. I think that everybody wants to live in a very, cohesive community. We all don't have to agree, but I do feel like we all have one goal and objective. And I would just say, these are the opportunities that we can all have to work together, even if we agree and disagree. And that's.
Thanks, Erin. Question at the back.
Okay, one last question, golf course related. I've been here for 2 years. I've been playing here since the golf course was open. In the last 2 years, I've seen 3 new golf course managers. My question is this: when we hire a new golf course manager, do we empower him to actually run the golf course, make decisions as to how the golf course should be ran, or do we have our committee coming up with ideas or policies or procedures or rules or whatever, and relate to him?
So the question is, when we have a golf course manager or the head pro, as Tom Weary is our new head pro and the golf course manager of operations, there is a budget from a financial perspective. From a financial perspective, there's a budget that he will sign off on, the 2024 budget. Obviously, he didn't have input into 2023. He is part of that budget process. He will sign off on that. And then that's up to him to make that budget numbers in 2024. The golf committee's role is to help come up with new ideas, new ways of, potentially improving the golf operations, and put those with Tom, because Tom sits on the golf committee as well. He attends that, and then they put those suggestions to the board. So the financial side is kind of cast in stone. Once we approve the budget, that's his number, that's what he has to achieve. And then, through managing the TC, through managing, annual memberships, etc., trail fees, all of that, that's what he has to achieve. In terms of improvements, that's where the golf committee comes in with suggestions on how to improve the operations, how to improve the golf course, how to improve our experience. And then that comes to the board for us to review.
Okay, but the golf.
He's empowered.
Thank you.
He's empowered.
But it takes all of us, right, Neil, at the end of the day?
Takes a village.
I know, but that's my point is, I saw some chatter last time for the last board meeting, and yeah, people have certain responsibilities to, make their numbers or whatever it is, but at the end of the day, we all want to improve our lifestyle, we want to make sure that our budgets are made, like, we all have a responsibility to that, right?
We do.
That's it, and we all work together.
That's the key.
That's it.
All right, we're losing people, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Gary? Sorry, Gary, there's a bit of noise. We're brought to shop. Yeah.
I think Pat indicated that our insurance premiums are about 300,000. What happens is it was done too late last year to get a bid. When do we have projected for this year, because I think we're on the same track of being late, of having a request for proposal or request for information for insurance for this year?
That's with the treasurer.
That's with what?
The treasurer, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight.
Okay, I mean, it's just, we messed up last year, so you need to be on the same track this year because you've got the holidays coming up.
We've had this conversation several times, Gary, in terms of we have a broker, we go to that broker, they go out to the various providers, and there's less and less providers these days in Florida providing insurance to associations like us. So we don't have the luxury of having multiple insurance companies that can provide that services. I know you disagree. We also went to another broker and got their view on it. And their view was that our broker is doing a fine job. So I'm sorry, there's not much more we can do but go to other people and ask them what their views are. And their views, we also went to First Services Insurance arm, and they also said our broker is doing a good job for you. We can't do any better. So that I'll leave it there. And now Alan will be reviewing that. Okay.
Yeah, can I just add to that?
Of course.
Thank you, sorry, Neil, I am supportive of this because we're doing the same thing. So many insurance companies have pulled out of Florida. Your market is so narrow right now. To Neil's point, there's only so many resources you can tap into in relation to getting the same information. And really your scope is very narrow. So we're beholden, unfortunately, to the amount of carriers that are willing to do business in the state of Florida.
I understand that. I was an agent for 40 years, did a number of HOAs. My question has been consistently, who has the broker gone to? Because there are certain carriers out there that do a very good job. If our broker isn't going to those, we don't even have that offered to us.
No, but Gary, I would say what I would recommend is if you do have another venue or another option, then bring it to all of us because we would absolutely be willing to hear any feedback.
I've tried to do that. And
Okay.
And we had a meeting with our broker, which Gary attended.
Yep.
And they explained the situation. He disagreed, so they had a disagreement.
Understood.
And, that's where we are.
Understood, Gary. I agree with Neil. I would just say that, listen, if there's something substantive, because we're all in the same boat, I would say as a community, like Neil's experience on the country club is no different than ours on the master. And I would say that if you have better information or if you have another venue, happy to explore it. It's just once you get to the execution phase, if they can't follow through with what they say they're going to do, then there's not much that we can do really, because we're all kind of in the same boat at this stage. The market is so small, and I get your expertise. We're willing to help. We're willing to listen to what you have to say in relation to help, for sure.
I think it's simple. You just ask, who are you going to for the D&O? Who are you going to for this?
For property and general liability,
And we look at the list and say, how come you didn't go to the biggest writer in the United States? How come you didn't go to this carrier that's one of the biggest?
Understood. Understood, and like I said, the market is narrowed significantly. So,
I agree, but
yeah.
it's still, if the best carriers aren't on somebody's list, we're being tried that opportunity.
Understood.
Just as a listener, I have to say, his observation is valid. Why is it a secret that we don't know who the broker is?
It's not a secret.
It's not a secret.
Well, what are the names?
Assured Partners are our brokers.
He's talking about the brokers, not the insurance carriers. That
The carriers.
And and she goes out, and the assured brokers go out, and they go to the insurance companies, and they go to multiple insurance companies and get multiple quotes. And then they come back and recommend to us which they feel is the best quote for us. And as Pat mentioned, and Alan will talk about at the town hall, our insurance last year went up 40%. It's going to go up another 30% this year. We'll pay over $300,000 in insurance premium.
Same, and it's the same for the master. There's no difference.
Same for your home.
Yeah.
It was.
And I went out and I reached out to everybody, even Pinnacle, who's one of the largest, oldest in Florida. And I was told, stick with mine.
Slide is our insurance carrier, just so you know, our personal home, my husband and I, we went from State Farm, we're now insured by Slide. Has anyone heard of Slide before?
No.
Exactly.
Okay,
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Any other questions? Anything online?
There was one.
The golf course shouldn't have to support the community, it should be just the opposite. The community should support the golf course. It brings up the sale prices of your home. That was one comment. Another comment was, so we use one insurance broker, would it be too hard to ask for 3 insurance brokers?
That's not how we have gone out to multiple insurance brokers, First Service and another insurance broker. They work solely, they don't work, you cannot have more than one broker. It's not how the market operates.
And well, Ron Phillips, so going back to Ron Phillips' comment, Neil, for you, the golf course shouldn't have to support the community, it should be just the opposite. The community should support the golf course that brings up the sale prices of your home.
Okay, well, that's a comment rather than a question.
It is, sorry, just reading as it's written.
No, that's fine. Any other questions? Otherwise, can I have a motion to adjourn the board meeting? Second? All those in favour? Okay, board meeting adjourned at 7:43.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, board.
Oh, she wanted to finance for the.
Yes, sir.
Every time he's in the room.
I'm the treasurer. I'm the board staff.